This is the Nations Conspire channel. Welcome to today's show. For those of you who have not heard, there's a lot going around in regards to a potential bio-attack, biological weapons attack on July the 4th of this year. Now, before I get into detail about these documents that are out there from the Bipartisan Commission on Biodefense, let me make it clear that I am not saying one way or the other that there will be a bio attack on July the 4th. But we do know that we've seen events like Event 201, which happened to conveniently occur right before the COVID outbreak which had the same exact simulation take place months prior to it actually going live. We've seen the Boston bombing. We know that there was a test run. There was a drill that was being run simultaneously. Same as the 11th day of September, there was an active drill taking place. Most school events that we see occur, if you actually research them, you'll see that there was active drills planned to do a test run so the kids know how to act and where to go. And of course, even events like what we saw in Maui, how convenient at the same exact time that was taking place, that the top emergency officials were on another island learning how to respond to disasters when the Maui wildfires occurred. So it's important to pay attention to these things. Now, I think at this point, the government is well aware, especially since Event 201, that people out there are waking up and seeing that they're actually having these events with the people of the world like Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation who funded Event 201. And then people are getting suspicious as they see these things actually come to fruition. The same exact scenarios that they're simulating end up going live. However, we all thought that after the 11th day of September and so many people finding out about the government training drills that were taking place on that day, that most people would say that's really a weird coincidence that they were running a simulation of the same type of event occurring and then it actually happened at the same exact time. So if people didn't wake up to that, and people didn't wake up to Event 201, which we know so many people haven't, there's still a likely possibility that when they put these things out there that they may actually go through with them. So this document called the National Blueprint for Biodefense, Immediate Action Needed to Defend Against Biological Threats was created in April of 2024 by the Bipartisan Commission on Biodefense. And you could see their logo, the Bipartisan Commission on Biodefense, and right underneath it, it says it's not over. Well, of course it's not over because they're telling us it's not over because they're the ones who are responsible for any biological attacks that would take place. It would come from your own government directly. But really what occurred in 2020 and 2021 and 2022 is more of a biological attack on the mind, a psychosis of the mind as the flu vanished and this new virus emerged. And the bioweapon that was really used was what a lot of people injected themselves with during that time period. So I want to show you some stuff here, including a couple videos that many people haven't shared that I want to share with you from their YouTube channel. But here are the bullet points in their document, which is a long document where I pulled just some stuff out there so you can see what the scenario is that they're talking about. Response recovery and mitigation, intelligence, attribution, and deterrence leadership. And then it's very important to pay attention not just to science and technology, but to detection and surveillance. Because again, that was one of the key things they wanted to implement was digital IDs, digital passports, so they could track and monitor people where they go and where they're coming from and convince people out there that everybody needed a digital passport so we could see who was on a plane with somebody who might have had a virus, and then we can quarantine that person and lock them up and put them in a FEMA camp for the rest of their lives, and you'll never hear from them again because they might have been near somebody who was coughing and sneezing. And of course, a lot of the documents in there, including the science and technology aspect, talk about developing more and more vaccines. So some of the bullet points before I play these clips are that the CIA officials are talking about the pursuit of biological weapons by other nation states, wink, wink, and terrorist organizations, wink, wink, that seek to kill 60 to 70% of targeted population. So this is some of the stuff that they have, including a fictional trailer, of course, wink to that as well. Anything that they claim is just a fictional scenario that they're running, where they're showing you the president getting hit with a bioweapon and the vice president taking over and how the civilians are under attack. And it's just some mysterious person that they can't identify who's doing it because, of course, it's coming from within. Always remember, any attack comes from within. So take a look at these video clips of these criminals who are talking about the coming bio attack, because it's not over.
The Bipartisan Commission on Biodefense presents a Trailer Studios production, Biodefense. From the makers of National Security comes a biological thriller that demands preventative measures.
Yes. Look, my administration takes biothreats very seriously. Now, in the last 5 decades, there have been more than 42 million deaths due to outbreaks, not to mention the devastating economic impacts of threats to our food. Now, we will continue our surveillance and detection protocols, and biological warfare intel will remain a top priority.
The mysterious illness that continues to spread across the United States has now reached the top as the president has slipped into a coma. The vice president is now in command.
It's spreading throughout the Northeast, and we can expect infections across the entire country in less than a week.
Mobilize all available medical countermeasures.
Roger that.
Do we know who's responsible for coordinating these attacks?
Not yet, but the virus doesn't care who released it. It's moving without discretion, and it's moving fast.
We need to move faster.
Critics are calling Biodefense a film no one saw coming. It's full of measures that demand attention. It's the most preventative film of the year. This fall, proactively prepare for a biological threat that might not seem very likely, but needs to be taken seriously. Biodefense. Measures to defend against biological threats. Biological threats can be naturally occurring infectious diseases, accidental releases, or biological attacks that impact humans, animals, plants, and/or environments.
Biodefense is so important in part because it's a weapon of mass destruction that we minimize. Bioweapons can be natural, they can be man-made, they can be accidental. They can come from all kinds of sources and can have every bit as much of a consequence as a nuclear weapon has.
Viruses are smarter than us. They will develop in directions that we may or may not predict. We may or may not be able to know ahead of time which one is coming, but when they do come, they impact everyone equally.
Biodefense is the defense against infectious diseases from naturally occurring causes, from accidental releases like from laboratories or facilities, and from biological attacks.
When you have so many agencies and so many different offices responsible for biodefense issues, where does the leadership come from? You have to have someone in charge.
Viruses don't pay attention to political ideology. Risk, like pandemics and biological threats, requires that same kind of bipartisan leadership.
I've seen the commission working in both Democratic and Republican administrations with both Democratic and Republican Congresses.
We operate by consensus. The job of our commission is to anticipate the future.
Unfortunately, due to modern science, the nature of the threat is expanding at least as fast as our ability to counter it.
COVID was the most severe wake-up call anyone could possibly experience. We're going to experience it again. The real question is, are we going to be ready? And the answer today is we are not.
The way in which the flu epidemic dislocated millions of people around the world, it could happen again. We're traveling much more than people did in 1918, but we also have the capacity to develop countermeasures much better than they did at that time, and shame on us if we don't.
The National Blueprint for Biodefense that we are releasing this year has in it 36 recommendations that go across all the different agencies and Congress.
We've educated our colleagues in Congress about what the blueprint was. The new blueprint is going to really dig in even more as to what the White House, Congress, and all the different agencies need to do.
Governor Ridge always talks about public service as being something that you can do from in the government or outside the government.
Well, I'm always hopeful. I wouldn't have been on this commission for 10 years if I didn't think that we would continue to make progress.
I believe that people are starting to listen. This commission has made the point that there's an urgency in every level of government, in every healthcare institution, to be organized and to be ready.
It's amazing how they know ahead of time that there's going to be another bio attack, and they can't tell you exactly who it's going to be from, but they're just telling you that there will be one, because of course, as this channel says, nations conspire. That's what this is about. These nations are conspiring together against the people of this earth. They believe that the world is overpopulated. They believe that we all need to be put under behavioral control and live the way that they want us to live, which is to be subservient, which is to be completely removed of all individuality, all individual thought, and to comply to whatever Big Brother tells us. So let's take a look at the document that's talking about an actual attack occurring on July 4th, 2025, the National Blueprint for Biodefense. April 17, 2024, when we issued the first edition of our National Blueprint for Biodefense 8 years ago, we stated that the U.S. was not sufficiently prepared for impending biological threats. Then, as today, we acknowledge that while some biological events were inevitable, their devastating impacts were not. We now know that had our country implemented the 33 recommendations, 33, there's that key number that we know the Freemasons and the secret societies use in all of their scenarios. There's always a 33 in there because they're the ones responsible for creating these events that occur. So 33 recommendations we made in that report. COVID-19 would not have taken such a deadly toll on our citizens and economy. This failure to act resulted in loss of life, societal disruption, and loss of confidence in our government. Despite having made some progress, the nation remains dangerously vulnerable to a biological event. And here is the scenario that they have inside of their blueprint. Listen, the following hypothetical opening remarks by the chair of a congressional joint inquiry provide context for this report by portraying a biological attack sufficient to cause the catastrophic consequences warned of by the Bipartisan Commission on Biodefense. The scenario describes how a biological agent could target humans and animals, how it could emerge, some of the key interagency capabilities required to address the agent and its impacts, and the consequences of failure. Joint inquiry into administration and congressional actions before and during the bioterrorist attacks of July 4th, 2025. U.S. House of Representatives Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence and U.S. Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. Chair, I call this first hearing of the joint inquiry to order 9 weeks ago. Some nation or terrorist group, we still do not know who, attacked the nation's capital and other U.S. cities with biological weapons as we celebrated Independence Day. The infectious agent that they used to kill at least 280,000 Americans and infected at least 400,000 throughout the country in a single day, in addition to the 200,000 dead and 800,000 sickened animals. These numbers will increase as the disease spreads. Many of our own colleagues and staff here in Congress fell ill and died. Yeah, I'm sure. You mean went underground. Coordinated attacks in allied nations in the days that followed killed tens of thousands more. We are now hearing that the terrorists conducted smaller-scale attacks in American cities prior to the July 4th incidents to test our defenses and gauge our responses. These smaller-scale attacks went largely unnoticed. Laboratory tests confirm that Nipah virus caused the disease, but we still do not know what methods or adversaries used to infect humans and spread the disease among livestock in rural communities. Animals and people were sick for more than a month before we realized what had happened. While the virus is in the same family as other common human and animal viruses, most American veterinarians and physicians had never seen the Nipah virus before, which delayed recognition. The virus, which in nature does not spread easily among people, was genetically modified to increase its ability to spread from animal to animal, animal to person, and person to person, while still retaining a mortality rate of over 40%. For years before this, many experts said that although nation states and terrorist organizations aspire to use biological weapons, They lack the leadership, organizational wherewithal, infrastructure, expertise, and social support to develop and deploy them. Despite these assessments, our adversaries conducted the deadly biological attacks of July 4th here and throughout the world. They took advantage of our failure to eliminate vulnerabilities revealed during COVID-19, our failure to conduct sufficient biological intelligence activities to indicate an imminent attack, our failure to achieve early detection of the biological agent, and our failure to identify the source of exposure in a timely way, our failure to rapidly identify and recognize its occurrence in livestock, our failure to rapidly identify that it is in people, our failure to consistently fund public health and healthcare preparedness, our failure to stockpile sufficient medical countermeasures, and our failure to communicate effectively within the government to our allies, and most importantly, to the American people. Ultimately, our adversaries took advantage of our failure to make biodefense a top national priority. It is especially painful to me and the other leaders of committees throughout Congress that we have failed in our duty to gather the necessary information and data, connect the dots, produce intelligence to prevent and attribute these attacks. Sadly, such as the 9/11 Commission observed in its analysis of the attacks of 2001, the attacks of 2024 can be ascribed to failures to heed many warnings and commit to preventing biological events from affecting our national security. There were failures of prediction, early warning, and detection. The diplomatic, intelligence, law enforcement, and military communities failed to discover the intent and provide advance warning of well-planned and direct attacks on the United States and its interests overseas. Well, of course, because they were the ones responsible for the attack. The Department of Agriculture, Department of Defense, Department of Health and Human Services, and Department of Homeland Security failed to detect the bioagent upon release. There were and continue to be failures to respond effectively. And he says, this goes on to say, as I speak, the critical infrastructure owners and operators and emergency service providers are struggling valiantly to do their jobs while keeping their own families safe in the absence of adequate protection. Our military is splitting resources to help with domestic response and operations overseas, and the intelligence community is spread thin, trying to prevent our enemies from taking further advantage of our vulnerabilities to biological and other threats. That's pretty interesting with the type of military that we have, that another country would be able to unleash a bioweapon in our country. But of course, we know that would be our own military releasing the bioweapon. And then as it says there, it says the military will be splitting their resources for domestic response. They'll let a bioweapon loose, and then our own military will be driving tanks down the streets, I suppose, right? And rounding people up who they say are close to the virus and need to be contained and put inside of a FEMA facility, right? So it goes on to talk about our national leadership at all levels, federal and non-federal, failed to heed the advice of the 9/11 Commission, the Weapons of Mass Destruction Commission. I mean, the stuff that they spew out, right? The 9/11 Commission, give you a break. The Bipartisan Commission on Biodefense and many other experts who warned of the dangers of biological terrorism and warfare. How about the people who are warning about the dangers of the Republican and Democratic Party, who have convinced the people that they're in a democracy or a republic, that they're actually working in the people's best interest when they're sabotaging our way of life, continuing to create bioweapons, or at least tell you that there's bioweapons, so that they could change your way of life, put you in a psychosis, make people wear masks still years later when they're driving in their cars, and of course, convince people out there that they need to get monitoring and tracking underneath their skin, because that's really what it's about, so that they could really detect where it's coming from and who has it. And then we'll all be safe and we'll all be happy, right? While our neighbors are getting detained because of, well, the things that they actually are talking about on the internet, not because they're somebody who may have been exposed to some sort of a virus. And the rest of this isn't really important to read. I mean, there's a long document that you could find for yourself and you could go through. But some of the little bullet points that they put in there is they do discuss misinformation, how one of the important things that they need to handle is, of course, misinformation, because that's always a big thing, right? They can't have people out there saying, well, they're talking about some biological weapon coming from another country, and then people like me and you saying, well, how does that even happen with the military that we have? Can somebody explain to me how that occurs? Just like, can anyone explain how the planes were hijacked, the supposed planes, and how it looked like a controlled demolition and the people still celebrating on the rooftop? Well, no, they can't explain any of that stuff. See, that's misinformation, because you're exposing your own government's involvement in actually going after their own people. So Another bullet point is a range of factors: rising population, globalization, ease of international travel, climate change, urbanization, land use change, increased human-animal contact, agricultural animal husbandry practices also contribute to the significantly increasing risk and frequency of naturally occurring infectious disease outbreaks that can lead to pandemics with severe consequences. So, like I said earlier, I'm not saying that there's an event occurring on July 4th. I'd find it highly unlikely, and I feel like it would be awfully suspicious if they chose July 4th, but I wouldn't put it past them either. Because it seems as if no matter what, how fake, look at some of these psyops we've seen recently, right? The Molotov cocktail story, where we see the guy with his shirt off, and we see people walking around, not running away from a guy who's supposedly setting people on fire. People are laying there sunbathing, and the guys walk around shirtless with Molotov cocktails, right? You look at that and you look at and you just go, this doesn't look real. This doesn't look, and people believe it because it's on the news. Or we can look at the jailbreak situation, right? That little hole in the wall. And then how they spelled wrong, this is too easy. How they escaped the prison, right? All those people escaped, and the guards helped them out because the guards were like, hey, why not? I'm not going to go to jail for the rest of my life from helping a complete stranger and letting them loose out of a prison where there's cameras everywhere and this could be documented that I'm involved. Yeah, of course. Or all the school events that we see with the duping delight. We all look at those events, and what do we say? We say, how do people actually believe this? How do people actually look at this and think that it's real? How do they not question it? So really, when you see something like this, just like Event 201, we all pointed out Event 201. Did it help wake a lot of people up? Yes, it did. Did it wake everyone up? No, it didn't. Still, over half the population at least doesn't know what Event 201 is, probably 75%. People in your life may know because you may have told them about it, but the majority of people don't. And when they hear about it, they roll their eyes and dismiss it because they've been trained to do that. They've been trained by all of the talking heads on television, all of the late night talk show hosts who talk about conspiracy, tinfoil hat, and hit the laugh box. It works on them. Makes them just automatically dismiss it, right? So we could look at this and we could be like, this would be too obvious. That there's actually something on July 4th. Hey, we could go back and we could show people these documents, that they've told us about a simulation that they were running and they're saying it was hypothetical that was occurring on July 4th. What a coincidence, right? And these people still would probably look at us like we had 10 heads. They probably would question the validity of the document. And they'd say you're a conspiracy nut. So would I put it past them to run this on July 4th of this year? No, I would not. But do I think so? Do I think it's actually happened? I'd be pretty surprised, to be honest with you, but nothing really does surprise me anymore. They literally could tell you and go on national TV and say, hey, all the wars and all this stuff, it's all of us attacking our own people. The president's working with the Democrats, Trump and Biden are best buddies, and Obama, and they're doing this to you, and the people would laugh and shrug it off and say that they were trolling them because you just can't get it through their actual heads. But people do need to be aware of this. The Bipartisan Commission of Biodefense, even them saying in their logo, it's not over. Right? Well, of course it's not. How do they know that it's not over? All of a sudden, just diseases constantly emerge and emerge and emerge and emerge, right? We're doing this in the 60s and 70s, telling everybody, hey, there's going to be a massive bioweapon attack, right? They weren't doing that and having people prepared for, oh, yeah, okay, sure, no, right? Well, people aren't suspicious anymore because people aren't thinking anymore. They're letting the technology do the thinking for them. They're literally walking around on autopilot, on cruise control. There's no independent thought anymore. That's why they can get away with this stuff. That's why they can go right out there and say, hey, we're going to do a simulation of a bio attack on July 4th, 2025. And then if the event actually did occur, all these people would just go, yeah, so what? Oh, I don't know. Because they can't think at all. They don't believe this, and part of them doesn't want to because they're like giant children, like I've talked about in the past. Psychologically, you look how so many adults are reverting to their childhood. You see adults at these conventions buying toys that they grew up with, collecting things that they liked when they were 5 years old, 10 years old. That's part of regression. That's part of not being able to face conflict. It's adults regressing to childlike behaviors because of the psychological operations they're being put under. It's a constant harassment every single day, and we need to stand up and be strong against it, not be fearful of it. So this is the type of stuff that they put out there, and still people don't even blink, right? They just go, oh, they're just trying to prepare and help us out. Make sure that not, and you go, what about Event 201? What about the Boston bombing? What about 9/11? What about the Maui situation? How they conveniently were they were literally at a meeting talking about what would happen if Maui burnt on fire in Lahaina, right? And still nobody wakes up to this stuff, or all the school events where there's, oh, well, they just had an active drill. Oh, they had a scheduled active drill today. How convenient. And then that actually happened on the same day, right? And still, none of these people, no light bulb goes off in their head because there's nothing in there anymore. It's about brain waves and frequencies, right? These people are constantly living reality every day. When they wake up until they go to bed, they are in a delta wavelength. They are in a deep sleep. You might as well still be sleeping. They're walking around with their eyes open, but they're not conscious at all. They're not in a beta wave or a gamma wave. They're not thinking. They're not concentrating on things. They're just going through the motions. And that's what it's about. It's about frequencies, brainwaves. They hit you with the news constantly. And if you're on your devices constantly getting fed news and information, you're constantly in a theta wave or a delta wave brainwave where you could be programmed, and they're all being programmed. So this stuff that's out there, again, I'm not saying that anything will occur on July 4th. I never date set, never have, never will. There's no real point in doing it, but just say hypothetically that we have a bioweapon attack in the fall, because one of those video clips is talking about happening in the fall or in the next winter or next summer. This is still stuff that people should see because there's so many similarities in these events when they're scripted out ahead of time, like Event 201, where you could just see every single thing they detailed actually did occur. So be aware of these things, share this information. I'm not trying to get anybody fearful at all. We obviously know we're really under bio attack every single day. So let's be real. You're getting sprayed every day from the sky. You're probably getting smart dust sprayed on you from the sky. Every day we're under biological warfare. Okay, our food, if you buy processed food, even if you don't and you get it organic, you don't know what's getting sprayed on your local farmer's tomatoes that you're buying, right? He might say, hey, I don't put anything on, okay, but it's still getting hit with the crap coming down from the sky. We're constantly under biological warfare, not to mention the water that we drink, so the air that we breathe in. They're constantly doing it to us. There is no boogeyman who's doing this from overseas. It's happening from within. Just like if there is a bio attack, it's happening from within. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.